Hey guys, Travis Gillespie here. I'm going to put a value up on the screen. I'm going to put 5 down, and I'm going to ask you, what if I were to ask you to multiply 10 times 5? What would the value be? Now, some of you could calculate this in your head, and you'd say the value is 50. And if I were to ask you to prove it, you would probably say, well, 0 times 5 is 0, 1 times 5 is 5. But I could ask you again another way of proving it, and some of you would probably be able to say, well, I'm going to take 5, and since I'm multiplying by 10, and there's 1 0 in 10, I'm just going to plug a 0 in after that number, because whatever number you multiply by 10, well, you just add 1 0 to the end of that value, and it will give you your new number. Again, I'm going to say, hey, prove it. There's another way you can prove it, so I'm going to rewrite the value 5. All right, now there's a decimal hiding next to 5, and that decimal, it's hiding right after the 5. Whenever you look at a whole number and you ask yourself, well, where's the decimal? If it's not there, it's always at the end of that value or that number. Okay, so how can we prove that 5 times 10 is 50 with this decimal? Well, whenever you multiply any value times 10, it will move the decimal one place value to the right. Let me show you. Since I'm multiplying by 110, I'm going to move the decimal one place value to the right, and it will end up over here where this x is. But what goes in this empty space? I'm going to plug a 0 in that empty space. So my new number is 50, and the decimal's hiding after the 0 now. Cool. So I'm going to erase that last x because it represented a decimal and we can hide it. My value is 50, and the reason I know it's 50 is because I moved the decimal one place value to the right because I'm multiplying by 110. But what if I were to multiply by 2 tens? Well, let's think about this. I'm just going to write that down. 10 times 10. Well, I have 2 tens here that I'm going to multiply 5 by. Well, 10 times 10 will give me a value of 100. So I'm really multiplying 5 by 100. And I'm just going to underline that. Cool. So again, you could probably do this in your head, this math in your head, and I'm just going to write the value 500. 100 times 5 is 500. But I'm going to say prove it. And this time I want you to prove it using decimals. So we're going to start with the value 5. The decimal is hiding right after the 5. There's 2 ways of thinking about it. Well, one way is you can say, well, if you multiply the value 5 times 110, it moves that decimal one place value to the right. So if you multiply 5 times 2 tens, it's going to move that decimal 2 place values to the right, and the decimal will end here. Again, you're going to plug zeros in that empty space, or those empty spaces. Another way of thinking about it is, well, how many zeros are in the value 100? There are 2 zeros in the value 100, so I'm going to move the decimal 2 place values to the right. There's 1 0 in 10, so I'm going to move the decimal 1 place value to the right. So if I were to take 5 and multiply by, let's say 10,000 this time, I'm going to make it a little bit more challenging. So 10,000 times 5, what would be the new value? And I want you to prove it using decimals. Well, this would be a good time to pause and practice yourself. All right, so I'm going to put 5 down, and the decimal, it's after the 5. I'm just going to ask myself, how many tens am I multiplying by here? Well, 10,000 is 1, 2, 3, 4 tens being multiplied together, and I'm multiplying 5 by 1, 2, 3, 4 tens. So I'm going to move this decimal 1, 2, 3, 4 units to the right, and the decimal would end over here. I'm going to fill in the empty spaces with zeros, and I'm just going to create a visual that we are multiplying by 1, 2, 3, and 4 tens. So this is the quick trick when you're multiplying any value times 10 or multiple tens. Another way of thinking about it is, how many tens are we multiplying the number by? I'll see you in another video.